Imagine walking down the streets of Miami or Chicago, only to realize that some of the most dangerous criminals from Venezuela are now running illicit operations right in your backyard. Venezuelan gangs, particularly Trene de Aragua, have extended their violent reach across the U.S., sending shockwaves through major cities. Their activities are no longer limited to South America. They are now firmly embedded in American soil. Trene de Aragua, from Venezuela to U.S. cities. Once notorious in Venezuela, Trene de Aragua has rapidly expanded its operations into the United States, with known activities in cities like Miami and Chicago. The gang, originally formed in Venezuelan prisons, now capitalizes on the recent wave of migration to infiltrate American communities. Their criminal activities include drug trafficking, human trafficking, extortion, and more. Their reach now extends beyond their home country, building networks in countries such as Chile, Colombia, and Peru. Before making their way into the U.S., the gang's rise can be attributed to Venezuela's economic collapse, which has led to a mass exodus, allowing Trene de Aragua to exploit the migration crisis. Their systematic approach to embedding themselves in U.S. cities has alarmed law enforcement officials, raising fears that their tactics could destabilize communities much like they have in South America. Human smuggling and trafficking operations. Trene de Aragua is heavily involved in human smuggling and trafficking operations. They profit from exploiting vulnerable migrants fleeing Venezuela, promising them safe passage to the U.S., only to subject them to forced labor or sexual exploitation once they arrive. This human trafficking network spans across Latin America, with the gang establishing footholds in countries like Chile and Peru, and now in the U.S. Their human trafficking operations are notorious for extreme violence and cruelty, with victims often coerced into the gang's illicit activities. In many cases, individuals seeking a better life in the U.S. find themselves entrapped in a cycle of exploitation, with the gang using intimidation and violence to maintain control over their victims. This has raised international concerns, with organizations calling for stricter measures to dismantle the gang's extensive human trafficking network, which generates millions in profits annually. Chicago's growing problem. Trene de Aragua members embedded in migrant populations. The Chicago Police Department issued warnings about Trene de Aragua gang members who have embedded themselves in the recent influx of migrants. The gang's presence in the city has heightened concerns over violent crime, particularly human trafficking and drug smuggling. Chicago, known for its complex gang landscape, now faces an additional threat as these Venezuelan criminals bring with them their brutal tactics and a sophisticated understanding of organized crime. With thousands of migrants entering the city, Trene de Aragua has found fertile ground to recruit and expand its operations. Their ability to blend into migrant communities while continuing their criminal enterprises presents a unique challenge to law enforcement, making it difficult to track their movements and disrupt their activities. The gang's arrival has prompted officials to increase border surveillance and intelligence sharing between federal and local agencies to curb their influence. Miami's shocking murder case, a deadly warning. The rise of Trene de Aragua in the U.S. became undeniable when a retired Venezuelan police officer was abducted and murdered in a Doral, Florida, parking lot. This marked the first documented case linking the gang to violent crime in the U.S., sending alarm bells ringing throughout Miami-Dade County. The brutal nature of the crime highlighted the gang's disregard for human life and their willingness to eliminate perceived enemies, even on foreign soil. The incident sent shockwaves through the Miami community, where Venezuelan exiles have sought refuge from the turmoil in their homeland. For many, this murder served as a grim reminder that Trene de Aragua's reach extends far beyond Venezuela's borders. Miami's law enforcement agencies have since ramped up efforts to investigate and track the gang's presence in the region, fearing that this could be the beginning of a larger wave of violence. Criminal activities beyond borders. Trene de Aragua's modus operandi in the U.S. mirrors their activities in Venezuela and other Latin American countries. They engage in extortion, drug trafficking, and kidnappings. In Miami, Chicago, and several other states, they have swiftly moved from being a foreign gang to becoming a dominant force in the local underworld. The gang's international network allows them to traffic drugs across borders, taking advantage of the U.S. drug demand to fuel their criminal empire. Their presence in the U.S. also opens up new opportunities for money laundering, with American financial institutions being used to clean the profits from their illicit activities. Their operations go beyond violence and exploitation, as they have begun infiltrating legitimate businesses to further entrench themselves in American society. Their sophisticated organizational structure makes it difficult for law enforcement to dismantle the gang, as they operate in decentralized cells, minimizing the risk of a full takedown. 6. How did they get here? The answer lies in the political and economic turmoil in Venezuela. Under Nicolas Maduro's regime, Venezuela's prisons have been emptied, with many dangerous criminals, including gang members, making their way to the U.S. through mass migration. Reports suggest that this strategy mirrors the infamous Cuban Mariel boat lift, where criminals were sent to destabilize other countries. Venezuelan migrants, many of whom are innocent victims fleeing the country's collapse, are being tainted by the arrival of these criminals. The gang's presence in the U.S. highlights the broader implications of Venezuela's internal strife on global security. The Maduro regime's role in facilitating this exodus of criminals has drawn international condemnation, with critics accusing the Venezuelan government of using migration as a weapon to undermine U.S. stability. This phenomenon has reignited debates over U.S. border security and immigration policies, with lawmakers calling for stricter measures to prevent further infiltration. Transnational network, beyond just the U.S. While their U.S. operations are worrying, Trene de Aragua maintains a transnational criminal network across the Western. In Latin America, they run drug routes, control human trafficking pipelines, and dominate various illicit markets. The gang's ability to operate across borders makes it a formidable force that U.S. authorities are struggling to contain. Their operations in countries like Brazil, Colombia, and Chile have made them a key player in the international drug trade, rivaling other notorious cartels. The gang's decentralized leadership structure allows them to adapt quickly to changing environments, making it difficult for law enforcement agencies to track their movements. Their vast criminal network stretches from South America's poorest regions to the wealthy urban centers of the U.S., where they continue to expand their influence. This transnational presence has made Trene de Aragua one of the most dangerous criminal organizations operating in the Americas today. Law enforcement response. U.S. law enforcement agencies, including Homeland Security, are increasingly aware of the gang's presence. In 2023, the U.S. Border Patrol arrested over 30 suspected members of Trene de Aragua at the southern border. Despite these efforts, the gang's decentralized structure makes it difficult for law enforcement to fully dismantle their operations. The gang's members, many of whom have no prior criminal records in the U.S., are able to enter the country unnoticed, blending in with other migrants. This has led to calls for enhanced screening measures at the border, as well as greater cooperation with Latin American law enforcement agencies. However, the sheer scale of the gang's operations presents a significant challenge. Their ability to exploit weaknesses in the U.S. immigration system has allowed them to establish a foothold in several major cities, where they continue to grow their criminal enterprise. The role of U.S. politics. The presence of Venezuelan gangs in the U.S. has become a hot-button issue in the political arena, especially as the country grapples with its immigration policies. Critics argue that the current administration's border policies have inadvertently allowed dangerous criminals to enter the U.S., further complicating the already delicate situation. The surge in gang-related violence has become a focal point in the ongoing debate over border security, with some lawmakers calling for tighter restrictions on immigration. The issue has also sparked public outrage, with many Americans feeling that their safety is being compromised. As the political landscape shifts in preparation for upcoming elections, the question of how to handle the influx of Venezuelan gangs has become a key topic of discussion. And that's it for today's deep dive into the rise of Venezuelan gangs in America. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts on how these criminal organizations should be handled. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.